Hello, beautiful visionaries. Welcome to the Plant Spirit Summit. I'm your host, Lorna Liana, and I am so excited to be co-hosting this live panel called Psychedelic Stories. This is an interactive 90-minute live panel psychedelic story sharing discussion. You will hear some of the panelists that have joined us share their personal meaningful experiences with psychedelics, and then also get to step on the virtual stage and share your own. The actual hosts of Psychedelic Stories, I will take a step back once I introduce our main hosts of this session. That would be Mike Margolies, the founder of Psychedelic Seminars and the Baltimore Psychedelic Society. He is also the co-founder of the Crypto Psychedelic Summit. We're also joined as co-host by Mareesa Stertz, who is a filmmaker, host of the Healing Powers series on Gaia TV. She's also a community organizer in the psychedelic space and co-founder and media director at Lucid News. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining here. And I am now going to pass the mic over to Mike.
Thanks, Lorna. And it's great to be back here. For those who haven't met Mareesa and I before, we were on a panel earlier in the Plant Spirit Summit on Monday, which you can still replay if you didn't catch it. I was actually also on storytelling, but more on the journalistic side. And now we're going to host this storytelling session where we're actually going to have sharing of personal stories. And this is an event. Psychedelic Stories is an event series that I've been hosting with other folks too, including Mareesa, various places around the world for a few years. And it's always an interesting event. We get a whole range of stories in these types of events. You never really know exactly what you're going to get. And we welcome the full range of psychedelic experiences to be shared. So sometimes the stories people share are, of course, powerful healing journeys. There's also the other side of the spectrum, the really terrifying ones. And there's also the really, really weird ones. And so we welcome the full spectrum of storytelling here. But we do have some guidelines around the stories. And Mareesa, maybe you want to chime in a little bit and share a little bit about what a story is.
All right, so we're really excited to both have some highly esteemed storytellers joining us who are very experienced at this, and we also really like to open the platform for newcomers. But for those newcomers, there's a few things to keep in mind. A story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that beginning is a before, and then, the middle, or the beginning of the middle, is what happened. And then the end is how did things change afterwards. So what we love to avoid is long-going, dream-like stories that don't have a point. So, and what we want to celebrate is some sort of transformation, whatever it is. So keep that in mind as you submit your story. And what I think we decided works best is for people to go to the Q&A box, not the comments, not in the chat, but in the Q&A. And if you have a story you'd like to share, write us a 2-sentence summary. And then we will be conversing and trying to figure out whose story is the most exciting. Can we vote can we upvote people's stories?
I don't know if we can do that within Zoom. I guess one thing I'll add about stories too, make sure that if you're telling your story, it's actually, stories are usually told with first person pronouns, right? Like I, me, my. So you're talking about something that actually happened to you, and you want to share sensory details, like what did you see, what did you hear, what were you thinking, what were you feeling? So again, we don't want long diatribes about the war on drugs, how much it sucks. We all know that, and that's great, but this is a different place. This is a place where you're actually sharing your firsthand experiences with what actually happened to you with a psychedelic or plant medicine. So if you have, as Mareesa said, I think that's the best way to do it, is if you would like to come onto the stage, let's use the Q&A section there. We're not actually going to be answering questions. So we're going to use the Q&A section there to submit story proposals. So if you would like to share one, give us the 1 or 2 sentence brief summary of your story and we'll select from there. And then I think also raise your hand within Zoom to make it easier for us to find you and call you up onto the stage. And I think that's I think that's about it for explaining what Psychedelic Stories is. Anything to add, Mareesa? You're muted.
Feels pretty complete. I think we get to start with the highly esteemed Wade Davis.
All right. Would you like to introduce him?
I think Lorna.
Maybe he doesn't need an introduction.
Yeah, the man that doesn't need an introduction. Highly esteemed author, speaker, ethnobotanist, Wade Davis.
Well, thanks, Mareesa, and thanks, Lorna and Mike. And I have to apologize. I do have to jump off after I tell you this short story to another event. But this story really begins in a journey that Tim Plowman and I did studying the divine leaf of immortality, the notorious source of cocaine, coca, the sacred plant of the Andes. And as Professor Schultes, who sparked the psychedelic era with his discovery of the so-called magic mushrooms in Mexico in 1938, used to comment that Tim and I ate our way through South America for 2 years. And if we saw a plant that we even thought could be vaguely psychoactive, we just ate it. And in Bolivia, we stumbled upon a new species of the columnar cactus, Trichocereus pachinoa. Now it's Echinopsis pachinoa, which is, of course, a columnar cactus full of mescaline. And we tested it on ourselves in a waterfall on the eastern flank of the Andes in the Yungas of Bolivia. And it was powerfully psychoactive. In the morning, we found 2 new species of coca, erythroxylin, a new species of Brunfelsia. And then a few weeks later, as our journey together, a kind of epic journey of 2 years, came to an end, Tim and I, south of Lima, on a beautiful beach, prepared and consumed what Terence McKenna would have called a heroic dose of San Pedro. And I've always liked San Pedro. It's visceral, it's sensual, it's of the body as much as the mind. It connects you to the natural world in a really powerful way. And I thought it might just be nice, because one of the hardest things of recounting these stories, and one of the reasons they tend to bore people sometimes, is because it's difficult to distill in words a soul-shattering experience. But this was an experience that actually led me to, with some confidence, believe that I had figured out the mystery of the Nazca lines and how and why those lines became etched so famously on the deserts of southern Peru. So I thought it might be best to actually just read a couple of paragraphs in the book One River, many of which you may know, in which I tried to actually distill this experience. And again, distilling an experience like this in words is a lot harder than it may seem. But we were on a beach south of Lima, and it was noon, and the sun had burned off the sea mist. We waited for an hour or two until the light softened somewhat, and then we ate several handfuls of the dried flesh of a cactus we had found in the mountains of Bolivia. We sat quietly on the sand, watching the waves crash on the shore. Both of us soon felt queasy, a faint trace of nausea that could have been the first sign of intoxication or the onset of poisoning. This uncertainty slowly gave way to an unmistakable sensation, a warmth in the belly, a faint intimation of what lies ahead. The wind breathing in the air, a bird in flight, silent and composed. The waves falling on the sand, spitting up white froth. Suddenly the wave was within, the ebb and flow pulsing, moving physically into the body. We stood up and walked along the beach toward a headland where the ocean swell broke over a series of tidal pools, alive with starfish, urchins, and crabs. A surge of energy carried us up the face of a cliff, bare feet touching rock, dark stones bursting into blossoms. The wind blowing off the sea lifted us onto a broad promontory beyond which lay the entire desert. Every gesture brought forth a reaction in the dry air, a wave of color that ran away to the horizon. The air took form, became tactile. It was like swimming in a pool of soft pastel light. I turned and saw Tim silhouetted against the sea. Overhead was a confusion of a dazzling sky. Around the sun were figures flying in circles, creatures with red breasts, blue serpents for hair, and eyes like saucers of light spinning in tighter and tighter circles. A vortex of memory, a song, a luminous spiral, Tim's voice, a vision of blinding light, a tapestry of pearls embroidered with gold and silver thread, a blanket to rest on. The sky opened. A dome of the deepest blue gave way to black, with small crystals of light flaring on all sides. I looked down and saw the brown earth receding. We were caught on the wings of birds, passing through space, through emptiness, over lands of purple sand and rivers of glass running to the sea. From the desert, shapes emerged, castles and temples, enormous lizards draped over dunes, totemic figures etched onto the sand, a mere semblance of known things. Flying along the wild face of mountains, in the wind, the touch of clouds on feathers. They were our feathers, sprung from the skin. The eye of a hawk, the beauty of water carving veins in the earth, the wind carrying us away into the night sky and beyond the scattered stars, nothing to fear. Suddenly, a distant voice came from far below, a well of darkness, the pale face of a smiling child. I turned and saw a raptor arched across the morning sky, flying on, its beak aimed at the center of the sun. There was no sound, just the image of a soaring bird heading for oblivion, and then a slow spiraling descent that seemed to draw the earth to my feet. And once again, the ground. Slowly, I stood up and walked to the point overlooking the sea. The sun was down. Hours had passed. I looked back and saw Tim sitting on a stone at the center of a pool of velvet light. Pogo, our dog, darted in and out of shadow. We had no idea where we were, and for a moment, Tim seemed uncertain. "Are you okay?" I asked. The words came awkwardly. We both laughed. "Did you see the sun?" Tim said. "Yeah." In that moment, all things seemed possible. A collective vision, movement through time and space, metamorphosis. These were no more illusory or wondrous than the beauty of a dry blade of grass sprouting from beneath a rock in that barren desert. Tim followed me to the edge of the bluff. We walked blindly but managed to find a way down the rocks. The moon had yet to rise, and beyond the far side of the cove, headlights passed in the darkness. There were ships landing, small parties of men delivering contraband. We rested on the beach and then continued up the shore, retracing our steps until we came upon a strange sight, an enormous whalebone stranded in the sand. I looked back and saw waves of color flowing from Tim's brow. I walked on, climbing slowly up a steep slope that rose from the sea. Pogo darted about, chasing a fox. I paused at the crest of the hill and waited. To the east, the mountains lay bare, a dark ridge on the night horizon. Overhead stretched the Milky Way, and here below, parked on the desert floor, was the Red Hotel, our truck. The moon had turned slowly through the sky, and the desert was coming alive. Colors softened, the light changed, and silver traces flashed by in the rough wind. The surge of waves on the shore, the deep breath of exhaustion. We collapsed on the sand, with Pogo hovering by our side. Clouds rolled by, time was suspended. The smugglers worked through the night. Foxes yelped, the odd bird cried. Gradually, the eastern sky lightened, and the first intimations of dawn took us both by surprise. "Listen to that," Tim said. There was a low drone in the earth, deep, unmistakable, an impulse, resonant and complete. "That is the sound of life," Tim said. "I'm not speaking in metaphor. I mean the actual sound of life, the tone of energy within your cells." The dawn was fully upon us, and the clouds to the east took on a luminous tone in an empty sky. Every color of the sunset returned in an infinitely more subtle hue. A great rolling wall of mist swept over the shore, and by the time it dissipated, there were fishermen on the beach combing the surf for bait. And of course, what I saw in that vision was Tim's death. because he would die not long after that.
All right. Is that that's the end of your, so all right. Thank you so much, Wade. And yeah, it's great to have you on this platform, sharing the story. We've got we've got more psychedelic stories on the docket here. Mareesa, did you have our next storyteller ready to go?
Sorry, Mike and Mareesa and Lorna and Paulo, let me just say bless you all and thank you all. I'm going to have to jump off rudely and get to this another event coming in for me from Colombia. But best of luck this afternoon, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, understandable. You're a popular guy, and thank you for spreading your wisdom as many places as you can in the digital age.
Thank you so much for joining us, Wade. That was lovely.
You guys. God bless you all. Take care.
Thank you so much, Wade.
So,
all right, so yeah, we have a next speaker. Although we're having a little, we might have to actually have her wait for the next round. So I think
we'll bump up with another person. Yeah, and so we'll bring up. We've got someone we can bring up. I also would like to, remind everybody that you can submit your own stories in the Q&A section. And that after you put your story in the Q&A section with a very brief summary, also raise your hand so that we can find you in the attendees list if you're going to be promoted up to a panelist. And remember, these are stories that we want under 10 minutes. So if you are called up to the stage and you start to reach the 1 minute left, like the 9-minute mark, you'll see Mareesa or myself pop up next to you on the screen. And if that happens, that means, hey, get sort of time to wrap up the story. But yeah, we can introduce our next storyteller here. So it sounds like we have one person still trying to get in, but we have another on deck, and that's Paulo. So Paulo Sanson, come on up. Paulo is a man of many different hats. He's a historian, an anthropologist, a filmmaker. He's also been walking the medicine path with Yahe in particular. And I believe Paulo is going to be sharing a personal experience of his own with Yahe. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Paulo.
Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you so much, Mareesa and Lorna. It's an honor for me to be here sharing the stories of the memory. So to get to the point, as Wade said, it's a little complicated to share a story that involves so many levels of the reality. But trying to do that, I was in the Putumayo, that's the Amazon in Colombia. And I was visiting with a community, some taitas, some elders, and doing ceremonies of Yahe. I was in the house of Taita Juan Yaywaje, who passed the last year, and we had 2 ceremonies. And the next day we went to the Maloca of the Inga tribe. And I was very tired, and I didn't want to drink Yahe that time, but I said, okay, I'm gonna drink and I'm gonna rest. And I took that time a raw Yahe that is not cooked. And the taste is very mild. And I thought to myself, oh, this is gonna be light. Okay, it's good to rest. When in the beginning, when in the morning, like kind of 5 a.m., I went to the bathroom and I started like throwing up a lot. And with that, start a process of dissolution. I was already like drinking Yahe, Ayahuasca for more than 10 years. And I had so many experiences that were visions, always the visions that we know with sacred plants. But this was a very different thing, because this was not anymore a vision. It was happening to me with my whole body, with my whole mind and spirit. And an elder was beside me in the other restroom, and he asked, what time is it? And I started laughing. What time is it? What is that? And laughing very loud. And in that moment, I just decided from me disappear the concept or the feeling of shame. And I felt like I was living in a world without shame. I opened my door and I started like waving some people around. They started like looking at me like in a weird way. So in that moment, they were saying, what is going on with this guy? But I was like that, not feeling anything else that was my own experience. And I started like remembering the stories of the Taitas, the elders that they used to tell about sometimes when they can, or some of them could transform themselves into tigers, into jaguars. And I started like feeling in my whole body that I was about to have a kind of experience like that. I was like afraid, of course. I wanted to punch the wall inside of me, and I started yelling very loud. So of course people came, friends of mine, and they started like helping me. And I, at the beginning, I couldn't stop like yelling, screaming very loud. And I started to pull over my t-shirt like a piece of paper. And also the t-shirt of my friend. I was just destroying everything with a very, very strong strength. And they took me out of the restroom, and I was without any cloud in me, and I started like yelling. And in that moment, I started realizing a process. I was like thinking in what we know in the Jewish Christian tradition as the 7 capital sins. And I started like thinking, for example, in lies. And that was a journey that took me through all the lies that I said in my whole life. When I was a child, in a moment, it was like a process in seconds, I don't know, but for me was to be there. So like it was the time was melting, and the space too, because I wasn't there. And then I started with another sin, like, hate, and doing the whole process with that. When I started to having that feeling of hate in my life, and that took me to my childhood, took me to all the moments in my life. And that happened with many other feelings or that kind of scenes. And in a moment that took me to live and realize a story of humankind. So that took me to express, not to express, to connect with the sensation. And I was living that. Okay, what is the beginning, the source of the lies for the world? And that took me to the ancient civilizations, to the Babylonians, to the Egyptians. So where started the lies being part of the culture? And that happened with all the other feelings, all the other sins. And I start living in myself the whole story of the humankind in, I don't know the time, but for me it was a space of no time. I was living the whole thing in a moment, and I was saying, what is that? Thinking very far in my head. And I passed like the story of the whole civilization of the world, and arriving in a moment to that present moment where I knew I was. In that moment, I was in the ground. All the people was with the ortiga, making me like trying to calm me down. And I start like looking like the rivers that normally are brown. There was a Caqueta River in that side of the Maloca. And I started like transforming the waters in the crystal clear waters. I started like looking rainbows coming out in the sky. And the voice without voice of the spirit was telling me, this is the new time. This is the time of the prophecies, the new age. And it is happening right now. And I started like looking from there, like the cities and the people, like just living in harmony. And I was like, what? How is this possible? And I started like looking also like the president of the United States and many countries, and all that was transforming into harmony. And I was like living that and saying like, oh my God, this is happening. It is right now. It is here. And after that, past that time of that present. And that was a thing that it was also like, I don't know, like a learning of, time is nothing in that space. And that came, and I thought to myself, oh my God, I'm dead. So I can relate this experience of transformation with an approach to the experience of death, because for the ancient cultures, the death is transformation. It's not the opposite to life, because life is eternal. So then I said like, oh, I thought in my relatives, in my mother, and oh, they're gonna be sad for me, but that also happened. And that took me to the end of time, the end of that time, to be like in a space when everything was gone and was about to be relaunched again for the purpose of humans to be here in this process of learning what is the meaning of to be a human being, what is the meaning of to be in this particular experience that we call life. And that happened to me, and that for me was a portal, like Way says, this is not something that just happened in the past, but it's still happening. And that opened to me the doors for living another experiences in other times. That was like 8 years ago in 2012. And that was the way how I found an entrance to experience what is the meaning of the fourth dimension. That is the dimension of time, where the synchronic order is happening all the time. But there are not casualties, there are no accidents. Everything happens for a reason. That is the fourth dimension. In other moments, I could enter in the fifth dimension. That is the dimension of the no time. So that was an experience for me that is beyond like to say like I had a very strong vision, but it was something very transformative that is still resonating in myself. When I took another plants in another moments, I could recall that moment and to realize that we are a character, but we have to find out who is the actor behind that character. And well, this is kind of a small story when space and time melted in front of me. And that definitely was teaching me that if we want to see that new world, that if we want to live in that new time, that is something that we need to else, that we need to make it happen. It's not going to happen from coming from heavens or from the sky. We need to make that possible. That is through our own transformation, to live, to die to the ego, and to awake to the true self that we all are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paulo. Beautiful story. It is indeed, it feels like our souls work to unpack everything as a puzzle and see what we have to learn from it. Thank you so much. All right. Next, we have Sky Weaver joining us. And let's see. I'm going to hold on one second. Yeah, also, if anyone has comments and feedback, obviously there's been a lot of beautiful shares. Paulo, make sure to check out the chats and get some feedback from the audience. So next we have Sky Weaver, who she is a earth medicine mentor and psychedelic self-care specialist. And Paulo, if you can remove your video, that would be good, just so we have some space for her coming up next. And she's going to be sharing a story about slowing down and loving her inner child.
Hey, Mareesa, I just invited her to join as a panelist. So
Okay.
I think we should be seeing Sky, and there is Sky. Great.
Woo.
Welcome.
Hello. Hey, friends. So good to see all of you, Mareesa and Paulo. So sweet. Hello.
Hello, Sky.
Oh, hello, Paulo. Oh, long time no see. So good to hear from you. Thank you for your stories and your teachings and your wisdom and your process. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm honored to be here. It's so sweet to be in such a space where we get to just share from the heart about stories. And thank you, Mareesa, for asking me to join today. When I was sitting here thinking about so many stories over 10 plus years on the medicine path, and it's been quite the process. And the story that was really wanting to come forward was this story about finding my inner child and slowing down. When I found the medicine path, I was very excited about it, and I see this a lot in the community. People are like, "Yes, I'm so in," and then we go and we sit a lot. And this was several years into my practice, and I had stepped up as a guardian in my ayahuasca circle, and was really grateful to be there and be of service. And I drink a full ounce and still be of service. And my motto is "Go deep or go home," and it served me for a while to deepen in my process that way. But there was a theme that kept coming up, and it was actually a musical theme. There was a rhythm or a rhyme that seemed very nonsensical to me, but it would come up month after month. And usually when I was taking a break, when I had some silence, when I went to the bathroom, bathrooms are always such interesting places for intimate transformation. And there was a specific ceremony where this rhythm came up, and I was in the restroom, and I came back to my seat, and I was like, what is this? Like, how do I be with this, instead of it just kind of coming up? Like, it's here for me to see and to witness in some way. So I laid down on my mat and took some time for myself, which is an honor to be able to do when you have so many people on your team that you can really take time for yourself. And I laid down on my mat, and I just placed my hands on my belly and on my womb and on my bladder, and I just sat there, and this rhythm continued to play, and it became more and more clear, and all of a sudden words started coming through, and I realized that this rhyme, this nursery rhyme, was a way that I had created for myself when I was a child, to remember all of the things that I resented my mother for. And I had been adding to this rhythm for years. And as I sat there and I just trusted the medicine, I just went deep inside. I could feel the medicine working on my bladder and on my womb, and this on my root, these places of trust, and this what was revealed in this was experiences of shaming around potty training, of resentments from pre-verbal experiences even. And as I sat, there was a specific memory that came forward. And it was one of, I was witnessing myself as maybe 3-year-old sitting at the dining room table in our apartment. And I saw myself sitting there just deflated and feeling alone, and I just watched myself in this experience. And I was like, wow, a 3-year-old, like little Sky, you know, there at the table, and just watching myself cry. And I really connected with her. And in that moment, she looked up at me. And in that instant, I was transported through space-time into my 3-year-old body. And I was sitting at my dining room table, and I remembered, it was a memory. I remembered sitting there feeling so deflated and looking up and seeing this face above me at the table, not a person in the space, but a face like hovering above me. And I remembered her being kind, but me not knowing who she was. And in that moment, I remembered, and I also spoke to myself through this portal and said to myself and remembered this adult, this being, this kind creature saying to me, like, I know you're sad, and I know it's hard, and I know sometimes they just really don't understand you. But I'm here to let you know it gets better. And you might not be able to understand it now, but you will someday. And then I just sat there and like held myself. I held that 3-year-old, and that 3-year-old me was comforted and felt nurtured and was able to slow down from the raciness of dysregulation. And I was literally able to comfort myself in the past through this time travel. And what came to me in that moment was like, it's my job to love me. You know, it's my job to slow down. It's my job. I am an adult. It's my job to nourish myself, to nurture myself, and to care for myself. And from then on, my ceremonies shifted. I was able to be still more. I was able to discern, do I need to get up and help that person now, or can I just sit and let them be their own healer in this moment? I went through a whole year practice where I was only drinking quarter cups and started to nourish and nurture and be gentle with myself. And it really transformed how I showed up in ceremony in service to others, because I was able to learn and give that to myself in that moment. Yeah, that amongst many other stories in the power of this medicine. But I definitely thought that this piece of slowing down, remembering how to care for ourselves, showing up and being the parent we wish we'd had, and understanding that, yes, you know, I didn't get all my needs met, and they did the best they could. And it's my job, it's my work to forgive myself for resenting my mother for so long, and for pushing myself so hard and thinking that that was what was going to get me love. And that really, this slowing down and reconnecting with myself, I was able to fill up my cup and therefore be able to be of service to others in a way that wasn't rushed and didn't need anything from anyone, and I wasn't there to receive accolade or recognition from anyone, because I was giving that to myself and able to be of fuller service in a slow, nurturing, nourishing way that is truly part of my superpower in the medicine space. Thank you. Thanks for letting me share today.
Thank you, Sky. That was really beautiful. I love that. It's my job to love myself. It's my job to slow down. It's a really powerful message. I think certainly resonant for me, and I'm sure for others as well. Thank you for vulnerably sharing your journey with everyone here.
Thank you so much.
So our next storyteller is someone who definitely doesn't need an introduction if you're at this summit, because it's the person who's been hosting this entire summit. So we're going to have a personal experience share from Lorna herself. Everyone here knows Lorna by now. So Lorna, I'm very excited to hear your personal psychedelic story. All yours.
Why, thank you so much for the opportunity. So it was many years ago that I found myself in the family compound of an 8th generation Ayahuasquero from the Quechua community in Ecuador. I literally landed in the community of Mariposa, and I found a kid who I paid 1 sole to take me to the family compound, and I was wheeling my little rolling overhead suitcase down a dirt path into the jungle. And so then I found myself in a clearing, and I was in the family compound of the Mama Yactas. Now, Casimiro Mama Yacta, gosh, he must be over 90 by now. He was trained and raised in the traditional way by his grandparents, who were also ayahuasqueros, and really old school, a person that has spent years in the jungle doing solitary dietas, really knew how to do the limpieza with complete presence, and was just a beautiful, humble, unassuming indigenous man. You would have never known that he was this healer with such knowledge and experience. And what was interesting was that he was there with his spiritual son, who is a man from Hawaii. I will refer to him as C, the first letter of his name. And C was there with his partner, who has a first name that also begins with C. So it's C and C that they go by. And so it was interesting to be with this community and to drink the medicine that they were accustomed to making, which was actually quite mild. And what was interesting was that CNC had brought their plant, their tea that they made from ayahuasca that was grown in Hawaii, where they're from, and that was quite potent and tasty. I would refer to him as a master brewer. I've traveled all over the Amazon, and I would say that the 2 best ayahuasca brews I've ever tasted, one was the personal daime from Padrino Valdece in Mapia that was served out of a crystal decanter that looked like the color of brandy and tasted sweet, clear, and was incredibly strong. The other most incredible ayahuasca brew was made by CNC, and theirs was a thick, chocolatey tasting Hawaiian brew that was sweet. It didn't have the typical bitterness of Amazonian ayahuasca, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It had really beautiful visions. So I'd been there for maybe about a couple weeks, I would say, living with the family, learning, just kind of, just being with this beautiful family, and we drank ayahuasca pretty much every night, I would say. And this was a night where C was offering his Hawaiian medicine, and so it was, I think, the last night. Gosh, it's really the last night that does it, isn't it? So we were in their ceremonial room, and it was the Hawaii medicine with Casimiro holding his ceremony in the traditional way. And so they served their beautiful Hawaii medicine in a little shot glass. It was like, a very small amount, like a shot glass, like a vodka shot glass. And so I drank some and then kind of, lay back in my sleeping bag and just, kind of like allowed myself to surrender. And then within about 10, 15, 20 minutes, the medicine starts to come on. And then all of a sudden I realized with great alarm that this was a very, very strong medicine. And it was a lot stronger than I anticipated. And holy shit, what the hell was I going to do? And I started to actually panic a bit because it was I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to handle this. And so it was starting to get into that place of emergency where everything's starting to dissolve all around me into like technicolor patterns. Like I'm not even in this present reality. And I'm just like wondering how I'm going to hold it together. And then, feeling like my heart's starting to beat faster and faster. It's starting to panic, having this like spiritual emergency. And then all of a sudden I had this thought, but Lorna, you're not going to die, because nobody has died from an ayahuasca overdose. And the worst thing that could possibly happen to you would be that you would shit yourself. And that would be stinky and it would be wet and you would be sitting in your warm, like poop until you're able to move, because literally I couldn't even move. I was completely immobilized and like having this really strong psychedelic experience. And so I was like, oh my God, the worst that could happen is I'll shit myself. Okay. And so at that point I relaxed. I was like, yeah, it's okay. I can handle it. It'll just be wet and stinky. And then after relaxing into the surrender of, that being the worst, the visions opened up beautifully. And I relaxed and, went into this complete otherworld experience where literally it was like 8-9 hours of vision after vision after vision in full technicolor, visiting other dimensions. And so in this moment, in one of the visions of the many visions and realms that I visited, I found myself in a place that looked like an ancient Egyptian temple. And what was interesting was I was observing this little girl that was fetching water from a spring inside the temple that kind of flowed into a stone, square, pool. And she was fetching water out of one of those ancient, you'll see them in the Mediterranean, they're these ancient clay pots that are tear-shaped, that are kind of pointy at the bottom. I would have never have even imagined this, to be honest. But I noticed that that was the shape of the vessel that she was using to collect water in this temple. And so then, I was like observing her, and then I just got the sense that she was an orphan that lived in the temple, and she was kind of living there and doing menial chores and all of that. And then so then I'm just kind of like observing, and then there was like this fast forward in time where I found myself going through the temple, and there's like this hallway, and there's a room at the end of the hallway that was just radiating this golden light, but it was like this powerful spiritual light that was golden in color, and it was just weighing, it was like really the pressure on my mind was just like sacred, divine, wisdom, the great mystery, the universe, just this really profound and powerful spiritual energy that was coming from this room. And so I find myself moving through the space and moving into this room, and there's this golden room, this chamber, and I see this little girl, but she's no longer little. She's in her 30s. She's a temple priestess, and her job is to embalm the dead. And so I watch her, and she's preparing the dead for their journey into the afterlife, and she's embalming them and wrapping them in cloth. and, I think they used to take out the organs and put them into, clay pots. And so I'm watching her working, and I'm just seeing that this is very sacred work, and that she's in service to a profound, great mystery. And in this service, she's receiving great knowledge. And so then she notices that she's being observed by somebody else outside of time and space. And so she kind of, orients her attention to me. And then in that moment, my mind touches hers. And then there's a recognition. And then I realize beyond a doubt in my mind that this person was me, like, I don't know, 4,000, 5,000 years ago, that where I was in the future was a continuation of a spiritual journey that has been going on for thousands of years, since the beginning of time, since the spark of my consciousness entered into existence, that what I was doing right now was simply a continuation of life's lessons and the schooling in the great divine mystery that has continued on throughout the ages. And so in that moment, there was this recognition. Her mind touched my mind, and it was like, you. And then she left me with a prayer. And so she shared with me a prayer that she would say for every person that she would embalm, to wish them in their journey into the afterlife, where in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, I believe that the dead souls will then get into a boat, and they're traveling in the underworld, and then they're judged, I think, based on their merits. I don't really know too much about the Egyptian Book of the Dead, but I did receive her prayer, and that prayer was, may all have protection in their darkest hour of need. And so that prayer just kind of, filled my mind. And then that vision faded, and I separated from that realm in time and space. And then I just allowed that prayer to really resonate and feel the blessing of it. And so often I find when I am witnessing some of the this great suffering in this world that we live in, so many wars and so much violence and so much human suffering. And one of the practices that I have, I don't personally like to block out the negative news, because I like to know what's going on in the world. I'm kind of like, I have interest in global affairs, and so I'll read about what's happening. And sadly, there's a lot of witnessing of tragedy that you see, brought to you by journalists around the world. And so sometimes I will see these things, and I will feel in my heart and wish in my mind and send that prayer out, to those people that have been through so much hardship. May you have protection in your darkest hour of need. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lorna.
Thank you so much, Lorna. That was beautiful. What a reaffirming story to remind ourselves we're not alone, and that this can be shared with so many, and that we're all part of a bigger, greater picture. Really touching. Thank you. All right. So our next speaker is Ancient, is actually one of our attendees. So he's a monk, healer, ex-social worker, and artist. And he's going to be sharing a story of one of his first Aya travels, which has led to living a life in celibacy. So again, let me see. I'm going to, there we go. Perfect. Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. First, I would like to introduce you to my sister.
Hi.
This is Wallace Nessie. She's a rescue, and she's a Malinois. Best friend a monk can have, or a human. My actual name is Håkon, and I'm an ex-social worker. I started working with therapy when I was 17. So that's 37 years ago. And I walked for some strange path. It's been a lot of experiences. When I was 27, I had a Kundalini awakening, and I went on an astral travel, and that was amazing. Just straight out of my body. Ended up on a place that looked like the backside of the moon, where there were 14 creatures. And we had a talk, which was, they asked me, are you ready for this? Without talking. And I said yes, without talking, without really knowing what I was saying yes to, which was interesting. Anyway, let's see. I worked in social work for 22 years, mostly in institutions. And I worked with the abused, those with all the conditions you can think of, from ADHD to schizophrenia to people with various personality disorders, physical disabilities, autism, a lot. So I really worked with the voiceless, and that has been a blessing. I have been privileged to meet some of the best people in Norway through my work. And every day that I work, even though it's been tough at times, it has been amazing. But anyway, I had read a lot about ayahuasca, and it sounded a bit scary, but I decided, okay, now I'm ready. I had been divorced, and I was traveling as a monk and a healer, and and we were in this beautiful setting with some really good facilitators. I won't say the name, it's C and S. Those who know. Anyway, we had a break, and I was coming down from the ayahuasca, and there was this young girl sitting by the fireplace. And I went over there and I sat down and stared into the fireplace. And then suddenly I knew she had been raped. And that was not a pleasant experience, because I went through the whole experience along with her. I didn't feel the physical pain, but I felt the degradation, how disappointed she was. It was a gang rape. And I went through it all. And I can still remember how it felt for her. And it touched me so deeply. You know, I've had so many experiences with the sacred vine. But that experience, that was like the first time I worked with a very abused young boy who had been abused by his father since an early age. It really put things into context for me, and that is a huge part of why I now live as a celibate monk. I also call myself a Buddha. And some people, that's on LinkedIn, some people wonder, why do you call yourself a Buddha? That is, to me, the essence of all the psychedelics. It's about finding our own light, to find what's within them, to see that you are an enlightened being, you have the light within you. You can shine if you choose to. You don't need a guru. You don't need someone to wake you up, because you are already woken. You just need to realize it. Yeah. So I'm currently working on setting up an institution, because I think this is probably one of the most, and this is one of the things I would like to use in a ritual setting. I think it's very important to distinguish between those who try to make money off of the various psychedelics and those who come from an indigenous background, who really have the training that's necessary. There are companies who, yeah, I think it's very important to find the right people, the right facilitators. But I would like to, because I think for treating people who feel out of sync with the world, and I believe that most of those I see above here and who are in here now, they feel that this world it's a strange place. It's really quite, it's difficult to understand. Why do we behave? Why are, like Sky was talking about, why do we behave the way we do towards our fellow man? Why do we allow it to continue? What's the point? Why aren't we simply being kind to each other and share the love? I mean, love, and this is something I've heard so many times. When we leave this plane, all we bring along is love. We don't get to bring all the negative stuff, whatever. When we move on, we bring love. And love is also the only thing that grows when you share it. So, thank you. Namaste.
Thanks, Ancient, for sharing your story. Appreciate it. And we have another storyteller from the audience here that we're going to call up to be to the stage as a panelist. So this is Balam is going to be called up now. And so, and forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. So Balam's got a story here. There's a lot of twists and turns to this story, but it involves a back injury. It involves discovery of a lineage. Looks really interesting. And so bear with us here real quick as we invite them onto the screen. All right, are you with us, Balam? You might have to I see you're a panelist now, but you'll have to share your video and unmute yourself.
Can you guys hear me? Hey guys.
Hello. All
Hi.
right. All yours. Did I say your name right?
Yeah, it's Balam. Yeah. Okay, so I met Lorna a while back, so I know Lorna, and I met her at one of Tony Moss's concerts in person. So thanks for letting me share, guys. Really appreciate you. So my psychedelic journey started in my teens. It wasn't, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're great. You're good. Go for it.
Okay, cool. So I started using psychedelics when I was a teenager. I got into LSD and psilocybin pretty early on, actually. It was like 15, 16 years old. And I went in like really hard. I started taking high doses, and I eventually took like 35 hits at a 1996 music festival. And that led me to stop. That led me to stop using all psychedelics for about 5 years. And then about 5 years later, I took like a 10 strip with one of my friends. And then I stopped completely psychedelics for a very long time. And I was a wine delivery driver, and I hurt my back doing wine delivery, and I didn't know what to do because I couldn't go back to work as a laborer. And so I decided I'm gonna try the mushrooms, see what happens. And I did. I ordered some kits. I grew some mushrooms. And then after I took them, I I heard a woman's voice speaking to me, like, like I was romanticizing shamanism, and I thought, oh, I wonder what it'd be like. And this came up during one of my trips, and it was kind of like egging me on. Like, it was a woman's voice, and she was like, "Oh, so you want to be a shaman, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm ready." And then that right when I said, "Yeah, I think I'm ready," I felt the ground like trembling, and I saw like I don't even know how to explain it. Like, it was like little strips of videos like coming from everywhere, and like all these videos were coming towards me. And then as I could see them approaching me, I could see that it was like stuff from my past, and it was like going up my legs, and I could feel it like coming up my legs, and then like up my torso, and then when it got up to my neck, I felt like, oh my God, I'm gonna throw up. And I ran to the bathroom. I threw up, and I threw up, and I threw up. And I see all these videos swirling. Like, I mean, it was like a beautiful sight. There was like moving videos swirling in the toilet. And when I flushed it, I felt so good. I was like, it was like a weight lifted. And then I went to go check on my wife, who was actually tripping in the living room as well. She was in the corner of the couch, like this, like crying. And I went to hug her, and I told her, "How do you feel?" And she was like, she didn't feel well. And then when I hugged her, I started seeing her stuff come towards me. And then I held her as long as I could. And when I couldn't take it anymore, I went and threw up again. And when I came back and asked her how she felt, she said like, "Oh my God, I feel better." And I was like, wow. And then I heard the voice again say, "This is what it is to be shaman." And I was like, I don't like it. I don't like this. I don't like it. And so I continued. Even though I didn't like it, I continued taking mushrooms, and I started pushing myself to take higher doses. I started researching. I don't know why I had the urgency to figure out my ancestry. I started talking to my mom, my dad, started asking them questions about my ancestry. I started researching everything I could about, the Maya tribe. I found Dr. Boriegi's work with Wasson, and they have like a bunch of letters back and forth to each other that mentioned the Kachikel tribe, which my dad said he's descended from. And I'm like, oh wow, this is crazy, because they made these little Mayan mushroom stones, which is, it was just like such a synchronicity for me. And I mean, I was like, whoa. And then I didn't stop there. I kept like tracing it back, and I found some books from different people, different authors, like Frank Waters and Robert Rosekind, which I found a video from Robert Rosekind, who tied the Maya tribe to the Hopi tribe. And I'm like, wow, this is all super interesting stuff. Like, I found art from some of the Hopis that have like mushrooms on them. And it's been crazy. I wrote some articles on on EntheoNation. I actually sat with a kid who tried to take his life. Obviously can't say much of who he is. But the mushrooms, they won't cure what you're going through, but they'll help you see what's going on, and it'll take you to a safe space. And if you have support, then I think there's so much more research that needs to be done into that. I know, like I heard someone mention suicidality in one of the previous talks, but it's like something that hasn't. I think it needs more research, you know. But you know, I don't have much experience with it. All I know is the one kid that I've sat with who was suicidal. He's alive. You know, it's 5 years later, he's still alive. So I think there needs to be more research into that. But anyhow, my journey continues. I still grow the little guys and eat them once in a while, and I took Cherie's class. I know Cherie's on the panel. I took her class for integration because I had been facilitating journeys, but not like in a professional sense. But you know, now with Cherie's, yeah.
Just because we want to keep it within that story framework, and we only have 5 minutes left. So I have another storyteller. We want to get one more in, if that's okay.
Sorry,
Thank you so much for.
Fine. You're good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excited to hear how your journey unpacks, and thank you for sharing so much. All right. So, yay. So our next storyteller, and we have only these 5 minutes left, so is Angeline Toth, founder of Xenia Retreat Center on Bowen Island, and she's going to be telling a story about ayahuasca. I actually can't find it right now, so I'm going to let you just go ahead and share, Angeline. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. Yes, my experience with ayahuasca happened. I was invited over a couple of years, and I kept getting no, no, no. And then one day it was a yes. So I was a real beginner, but it was a very profound ceremony that absolutely changed my life. And I did write about it in my book, Radical Trust. So I'll just read it. And I know we're rushing for time. So I was in the ceremony, a beautiful setting. The shaman explained a little bit. The medicine man. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're great.
Great. The medicine man explained a little bit about the medicine and the journey unfolding throughout the night and into the early morning. He mentioned it would prove useful to form an intention before drinking. Each person was invited one at a time to sit with him as he offered the special brew and listened to people as they whispered their intentions. While I waited, I told my body it was okay to welcome in this medicine. It would be safe, even though I felt unsure of what could happen under its influence. I didn't have a clear intention at first, but as I sat opposite the medicine man, I noticed the words stringing themselves together to pose the question, how can I heal the illusion of separation? While I held on to this thought, I took the shot of medicine and swallowed it back quickly. It tasted ghastly, and I almost gagged, but assured myself it was okay and I could handle it. I went back to my cozy little spot with sleeping bag, pillow, and bucket, and pondered this question arising spontaneously from a deep place within. It was a concept I'd mulled over for several years in my spiritual practice, but I couldn't say I really understood it. I knew, though, this particular configuration of words had the power to unlock a secret door. It offered a key, and I felt it go effortlessly into a lock and turn. I sat patiently watching in silence the movement of people standing up and sitting with the medicine man to receive this potent elixir. One by one, a beautiful orchestration of trust and willingness occurred. Soon everyone got served, and beautiful chants from the plant spirits poured out through the medicine man as he beat his drum in exquisite rhythms. Reference to time and space disappeared as my body quivered with joy and delight. I saw colors and geometry extending beyond anything I'd ever seen before. Sounds so crisp and vibrant. I experienced a heightened sense of awareness. Struck by the words sewn together to form the question, had I found the key to unlock the secrets of the universe? They were secrets stretching beyond the human mind and beyond all universes. How can I heal the illusion of separation? Soon I was shown everything, and I'll do my best to put it into words. First, I was shown that we are all one. I saw how we are indestructible, immortal energy substance, yet ultimately beyond substance, moving between formlessness and form, between unmanifest and manifest reality. Nothing or nobody is dying, only transforming. We're not separate at all. I got shown we are not these bodies, but a dance of consciousness being played out for an experience. I saw I am God, and so are you. And no difference exists between any of us except the form we have chosen, which in itself is an illusion. I saw how Mother Nature is also an appearance, not a fact. It was as if we humans, or I, God, which is more how I perceived it, said, I know, let's play a game called being human. There will be some rules to this game called a body, having needs and conditions to unfold, and an ego mind generating the illusion of separation. There will be the job of having all the experiences possible for this thing called a human form. We will have the power to project various situations, circumstances, and people onto our screen consciousness for the purpose of having an experience. Through this, hopefully, we will come to something called compassion. We will set up all these scenarios in our pathway in this game of life, and one special effect will provide the greatest elevation of all, and that is that we will forget who we are, and we will have to begin the long, arduous journey of remembering. We will therefore live conditioned lives with specific scenarios to play out this game with the mistaken false belief that we're separate mortal beings subject to something called death. Whoa, really? I was deeply moved. Soon I saw how emotions such as fear and terror, jealousy, pain, love, happiness, resentment, guilt, everything was shown to me. I recognized how circumstances played out, like murdering, getting murdered, becoming the victim, becoming the victimizer, and all the possibilities of being rich, poor, small, powerful, weak. I saw the levels in the hierarchy. It seemed a game of polarities and limitation, though if you knew the game, you didn't have to be thrown around by it. As I got shown one scenario after another, laughter overtook me, uncontrollable, deep, gut-wrenching laughter. I heard the thought, shh, be quiet. Don't let them know you're awake. Don't let them know you know the game. Otherwise, you won't be able to play anymore. Oh, no. I saw and heard the pain of the people beside me in the ceremony. Some groaned, others threw up. I saw the identification to their pain and bodies. I felt their attachment to the story the mind projected, and I felt a sudden laughter arise that was hard to suppress. I didn't want to laugh when so many seemed in pain, but it struck me as overwhelmingly funny when I got shown one image after another of the folly I had gotten involved in the realization I had taken this thing called my life so seriously. I pushed my head into the pillow to thwart the waves of laughter. Then suddenly, Charlie, our potbelly pig, came onto the screen, and I remember thinking, if everything is part of God, does this include Charlie, our pig? At which point I could no longer contain the laughter. In my mind, I saw how Charlie, walking down the trail, so innocent, doing his job of being a pig. Does he know he's a pig, or does he know he's God also? I could see no separation in him. He was pure love. He was in his role as a pig without any apology and without trying to get out of his part. Becoming aware of the pain in the room and the diversity of experience, the thought came, how can I see all of this and still take life seriously? How can I have compassion for others still caught by the illusion and suffering? It became so important to understand how to have compassion. I went up to the medicine man with this inquiry, and it seemed all I could do not to laugh because I could see his role. He was me, I he. And I asked him, how can I know the truth and still have compassion? I cannot stop laughing. He said, it is okay to laugh and see all of this. Then he added, as quietly as possible though. Afterwards, I went outside and saw a man standing by a tree, what appeared as a tree. I saw everything as appearance, moving into form and back into formless state. And it felt so trippy to get invited behind the scene, as it were, of this extraordinary game. I asked the man, who are you pretending to be? He said, what? What did you say? I leaned forward and I said, I'm pretending to be Angeline. Apparently I own this place. Who are you pretending to be? All of a sudden, he broke out into laughter, obviously now in on the joke. We talked and laughed together for a while. It felt surreal, yet a knowing of truth overlaid the experience beyond anything I'd ever known before. Not wanting to intrude too much into his space, I made my way back. I wanted to pee first, but the thought came, I should test this theory. If it's all an illusion and I can ignore my body's impulse to pee, so then I can ignore my body's impulse to pee. I thought, well, if it's an illusion, so is peeing. As it turned out, that theory wasn't foolproof. I darted into the bush to pee just in the nick of time. Interesting, I thought, and realized we still have to work with the needs of the physical body. Yes, that became one of the rules I got shown. The body has needs and a destiny to fulfill. Throughout the night, I became aware of growing compassion as I saw an image of people hiding under a blanket of mind oppression and suffering. I saw my role now was to live as this being called Angeline. Would this be okay? Was it all right to live in this form, in this set of circumstances at this apparent time? I got shown loving self was all important, and I felt immense gratitude arise. I heard, forgiveness is realizing that what you thought happened didn't. I saw this as utterly true. If I project onto the screen an experience I want to have and it plays out and I blame someone else for it, I do not understand the game. I who set it up, in fact, played it out, am responsible. I should not punish myself, but free myself from this illusion so I can come home to rest and mostly to have compassion for self. The realization, I am God and so are you, became paramount. I had suspected this all along, but until this night and this direct experience, I could not know for certain. Over the following days, everything filtered through this knowing. I have an acceptance of my life as Angeline and a surrendering to the great mystery. I've glimpsed the truth and feel satisfied with this life. And peace prevails from the deepest core of this being, most of the time, not always, as the Zen master says. First the enlightened experience, and then you have to do the laundry. So anyway, it changed me forever. I could never, ever, ever not see that experience. I'm very, very grateful to ayahuasca. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Angeline. Thanks for sharing that story. All of our story of all of us. Yeah, so I've got some good news for everyone here. We spoke to the bosses, specifically the boss Lorna, and we can go a little bit longer. We have time for a couple more bonus stories here, so that's fun. We're gonna bring Haley up to the virtual stage for a bonus story here. All right, so Haley, I am promoting you to panelist status right now. Haley sounds like she has a really interesting story around using mushrooms for epileptic seizures and depression, and also caused by a brain tumor. So this is, I think this is some of the cutting edge of, we all know a lot about psychedelics for mental health, but what about psychedelics using for actual physical things that are thought to be physical in nature? And I'm interested to see what Haley's story is here. So Haley, let's make sure you got onto the screen. All right. And this is also, before you start, a gentle reminder to please keep your story under 10 minutes, because even though we got a little bit of an extension, we don't have infinite time. So yeah, please do keep your story under 10 minutes. And if you see me or Mareesa pop onto the screen next to you, that means that, getting into the last minute. I'm excited to hear your story, Haley, and all yours.
Cool. Hello, everybody. Oh, it's so wonderful to be here and be a part of this amazing journey of experience for all of us. And my hands will start moving from time to time because when I speak to new people, I automatically start using sign language because of my interpreting career. And I started teaching myself ASL when I was a little kid. But my mom noticed when I was a child that I would have these little giggling spells where I would just laugh for no reason for about 20 seconds. And my pediatrician at the time said, "Oh, she's just having anxiety attacks. You and your husband just got divorced, and I'm an only child." And they basically just kind of blew it off, But as I got older and I had this experience of the intense euphoria and just this hysterical urge to laugh for no reason, like someone was tickling my brain, I told my mom, I said, "Mom, don't you love it when you have that experience?" Because I would have deja vu symptoms from my epilepsy as well. And she said, "No, honey, that's not normal." And I started seeing a neurologist who diagnosed me with epilepsy. And all my tests were normal. They had no idea what was causing these episodes. In fact, in my teens, they told my mom, "We think she's making them up to get attention." But I started having more complex partial seizures, which were more blank out stages where I would start swallowing repetitively and my hand would kind of do this and I would grind my teeth. And I had those during school, and I'd sleep in the nurse's office for a while. And as I got older, our brains fully develop when we're 25, around the age of 25. And around that time period, I started having more intense grand mal seizures. But looking back on my life, the only time I was completely seizure-free was when I was still with my ex-boyfriend from high school back home in Chicago. And we would fly back and forth to see each other because I live out in Phoenix, Arizona now. And we would have these intense mushroom trips together. And my life was so good. I had no seizures for 2.5 years during that time period. That's the only time in my life when I've been completely seizure-free. And I'm in my early 40s, mid 40s now. And looking back on that a few years ago, I decided, I think that was really the only successful treatment for my epilepsy, because I was on every anticonvulsant drug on the market in the 90s and early 2000s. And I suffered through a right temporal lobectomy where they actually ripped out my right temporal lobe, my right hippocampus. And they bursted the artery in my right frontal lobe, and I almost died from an aneurysm. I had a near-death experience during those surgeries where I floated into a subway terminal, and I was a spirit, and all these other spirits were lingering around. And I looked down the subway terminal, and it was like, oh my gosh, there was a black tunnel here, a black tunnel here. And then this white light came sucking me in, and I crawled my way up a broken escalator, and I woke up and I was asleep I woke up holding the hand of my ex-boyfriend. That was an intense experience, and it didn't do anything to control my seizures. I recently started microdosing with mushrooms. And with that experience, I've had fewer and fewer of these episodes. I don't have any grand mal. I usually have catamenial seizures, which means they're very in tune with my hormones and my hormonal cycle. So when I'm ovulating and when I'm having my period, I tend to have more grand mal during my sleep. But when I microdose, I tend not to have those really bad seizures anymore. And sorry, I want to backtrack a little bit. When I was about 35, I was 26 when I had all those invasive brain surgeries. When I was about 35, they finally discovered a rare tumor on my hypothalamus, which is called a hypothalamic hamartoma. And what it is an extra bundle of nerve tissue. When our brains are developing in the fetus, the brainstem starts growing out of the spinal cord during the 7th week of gestation in the womb. And with that, these nerve endings start growing into the synaptical connections that we have in our brains, which shoot the electricity around and make us think and and all that good stuff. And with that, this little bundle of nerve tissue hadn't fully developed into a synaptical connection throughout the rest of my brain. So what it did was it stayed right there in my hypothalamic region and started stimulating it with constant electrical impulses, kind of like a pacemaker acts on the heart. And it was triggering all of these seizures that I had throughout my life. And it was inoperable in 2011, but they had gamma knife technology where they drilled a frame onto my head and they tried to radiate it from the outside in. And unfortunately, that didn't do anything for me. And they want to do another invasive surgery where they drill a hole in my skull and stick a tube down in there and try and radiate it from the inside out. And I said, no, you know what? I was born with this rare, unique blessing and a curse. It's a blessing and a curse all in one, because I discovered a book, The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down by Anne Fadiman, about 15 years ago when I was healing from that traumatic surgery. And it's about the Hmong culture in Asia, which believes that people with epilepsy are shamans and leaders. You fall down, your spirit leaves your body, you communicate with the gods, you come back, and you reawaken with, when you wake up from a seizure, your mind is completely reset. It's like rebooting a computer, and you have to reorient yourself. You have to determine where you are and what's going on. And it's a lot scarier for other people to witness than it is for the person who has them regularly. So anyway, it's been a long journey and it's been wonderful. But like I said, the amount of knowledge that I've gained from, amazing books, How to Change Your Mind. But I got to meet Michael Pollan a couple of years ago at a big conference here in Phoenix. And, I would like to educate people about the experience of epilepsy and the benefits of mushrooms for healing all that. It calms that electrical activity in my brain. And it really gives me a sense of clarity and just peace. So my brain can be at peace and I don't have to have convulsive attacks in my sleep where I chew up my tongue and I wake up with saliva and blood out of my face, But, it's still an interesting experience to have seizures because I do come back. Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, Joan of Arc, a lot of amazing people throughout history. Dostoevsky, whose book The Idiot was written about his experience being a prince, but also being demonized for having these seizures. And it's very interesting how different cultures view the experience of epilepsy. It's not well known or understood by Western medicine. And it's also comes from a perspective of demonization, like it needs to be fixed, it needs to be removed, it needs to be taken out. But it can be very enlightening to wake up from a seizure and just have a brand new view on the world and see what's to come, because it gives me a lot of encouragement to be able to control that experience myself. I don't have to have seizures, but if I want to, I can, and I can control it with my microdosing of mushrooms. And I'm just very, very grateful for that. So I appreciate all of you allowing me to share my story, and thank you so much for having me. And I hope to hear more soon. So thank you.
Haley, thank you so much for sharing. What a beautiful story. I just tried to message you here and request your email, but for some reason it won't let me message you, which is so strange. Maybe if you can shoot me a message at mareesa@lucid.news. I have a storytelling series on Lucid News called Adventures of the Psyche, and we share people's stories of transformation. And I think that a lot of people would love to hear more about how these tools work with epilepsy and such. And I love how you have framed it now and how it is an empowering aspect of your life. All right, so I think we are getting very close to time. I'm going to share one of my most powerful experiences with medicine. And then I think probably going to close out after that. So this is a story of LSD and S&M, not at the same time, but how one led to the other and the other led to a lot of insight. I've been on a very interesting and sometimes tumultuous 5-year journey of deep unfolding of traumas and such, and recognition of patterns and such. And working with medicines intentionally, I got together with a couple of friends one Saturday morning at 9 a.m. to take some LSD. And I was experimenting with this idea of really no longer resisting things, because what you resist persists, but really diving into my own depression, my own feelings of self-loathing, and all these things that were very alive for me at the time. And so I'm in a weird space, you know, I take LSD and I'm in a weird space, and it's like 2 hours into the journey, and I'm lying back on this couch and we're listening to some cool music, and it's very calm, but I'm sitting here spinning my wheels in the shit. And out of nowhere, one of my friends comes at me and grabs me by the shoulders and shakes me. And she's like, "How do you not know how great you are?" And I, you know, like I said, I was in such a deep space. So for her to come at me kind of violently like that startled me. And I didn't even know how I was reacting. There was this visceral, I sat up and I rose up to her and I started laughing. And every fiber of my being wanted to be hit, which I had never known that I had that in me. And as a child, there was abuse from my caregiver. So, you know, it was something I'd always found very horrible. Anger and beating and such was just like the worst thing you could ever do to a person. So for me to rise up at her and have the sensation of wanting to be beaten, like was a shock. And she looks at me and she kind of confused, and she's like, "Whoa there, sister, I'm not going there with you, but I know a place." And so a week later, after the LSD journey, totally sober, and in the middle of the day in Los Angeles, in this very sketchy part of the valley, she takes me to an S&M club. And the woman who is running the S&M club, by the way, this is my first time in an S&M club. The woman who's running it has a very good understanding of the psychological mechanics that are at play. What makes people want to get hurt? Why? What's going on? What are all these kinks coming from? And there's usually some programming and some patterning that was installed at a young age for people that make them want to get beaten. So, you know, I tell her my story of my childhood, and I tell her the story of the LSD experience. And she looks at me and she's like, I think you want to get tied up. You know, and I had met a nice man and we hit it off, and it was his first time, and we were both like giggling and like, "Oh, this is weird, hee hee hee," you know. And you know, it's actually all very PG-13. I'm still in my underwear, but I am tied up against this like cross, leaning back, arms are up. I'm using saran wrap to tie me up. And you know, and the woman had given him a little whip, you know, and he didn't know what he was doing. So she notices him trying, and this is like just not working out really. And she comes up and she's like, you know, "Give me that." And she explains the rules of the game, that she's going to smack me with this little whip, work her way up. And if anything becomes too much for my system, if it's like a hard no, I just tell her red, you know, and orange is it's getting close and stressful, and green is keep going. So she works her way up my body with this whip, getting all the good spots. And there's this whole, you know, it's exciting. It's interesting. There's tense music in the background. The cute guy is there, like kissing my feet. It's all very strange and entertaining. And I'm like, okay, I'm living life right now. This is whatever's happening. I'm exploring life, and let's see. Well, let's see what happens. And so it's fun, exciting, interesting. She's getting up here. I'm very, it's very invigorating, and I feel very, very alive. the pain is crossing between that pleasure mode, and it's all very good up until when she gets to my face, and then she takes her open palm and she's like, is this okay? Gives me a light tap, and then on the other side, a light tap, and does it back and forth a few times, I'm like, yeah, it's fine. And then out of nowhere, she hits me pretty hard. Nothing to leave a bruise, but hard enough to startle the shit out of me. And yet, I guess I want it. And I start crying. And there is this whole shifting of frameworks and belief systems that I had in my head that ended up having a really big ripple effect and continue to do so. What makes this experience so powerful, her hitting me was not, it's not like the pain of it caused me to cry. It was the recognition that I have been hitting myself in so many aspects of my life. I have been punishing myself and rejecting myself, and because my programs from childhood taught me that that's how I was to be valued, I had continued to recreate that pattern in every aspect of my life, from career, from relationship, from you name it. I was somehow figuring out a way to destroy or punish and ruin myself. So it flipped so much in my life around, and then started helping me understand how I was a perpetrator, how I actually have control. And that with that over the years, this, you recognize something beautiful like this through these intense experiences, but the implementation of it has taken a couple of years. It's still happening. I'm still like, oh wow, did I just do that to myself? How am I doing this to myself? And it's somebody else, but it's me creating the dynamic, or co-creating it. So creating it, whatever. Anyway, so that's my story. Yeah.
And I think that's the last story of our session too. So with the extension, I've had a couple hours of beautiful storytelling here. Thank you, Lorna, for allowing us to host this session.
Yeah, thank you guys for introducing this concept. I'm really glad to experience your psychedelic stories, and really deeply honored that each of you who came up and shared your stories were willing to do so from the heart and in total, transparency and authenticity. So we're wrapping up this session. Thank you so much, everybody who joined, stayed till the end. I just want to let you know some logistical information. We're going to post this replay to the schedule page. Just give us a little bit of time to render the video. If you enjoyed this series, we have another opportunity for everybody to check out all the sessions, even the ones that already expired. We have a full encore 24-hour replay for everything on Sunday. And then, of course, if you feel inspired, it's totally optional. But if you would like to upgrade and own the recordings and have on-demand access to the sessions, as well as amazing speaker bonuses and partner bonuses, all kinds of discounts like free little goodies, additional content from our speakers, you are invited to upgrade, and we will deeply thank you for your support. Now, I would love to ask Mike and Mareesa, if the audience would like to stay in touch with you, how can they best reach you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So my main platform is called Psychedelic Seminars, and you can find that at psychsems.com. That's PSYCHSEMS, and I've got a whole library of psychedelic conversations, all free. So free gifts to all of you. I'll post a link in the Zoom right here where you can find it. And anyone who's watching this video later, the website is psychsems.com, PSYCHSEMS. Thank you, Lorna.
We'll post the link down below the video. And Mareesa, how can people best stay in touch with you?
You guys can best stay in touch with me on Instagram at Mareesa_Stertz. Also Lucid News at lucid.news, or Lucid, the website is www.lucid.news, and the Healing Powers. Thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks for
everybody.
having us,
Thank you, Mike,
Lorna.
Mareesa. All right, bye, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a wonderful
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.